Colorado is now the biggest joke in college football. Is it time for Prime to hit the panic button? Let's talk about it.
FanBuzz Weekly starts now.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to FanBuzz Weekly. I am Tyler, joined alongside Patrick and Will, talking about all the biggest storylines from the past week of college football and heading into this next week. A crazy weekend of games starting on Friday night with the Colorado Buffaloes. Obviously, everyone's talking about it. Blew a 29-0 lead to Stanford, of all teams. Everyone's calling them a big joke now. How are they going to become bowl eligible? Is this a complete failure of the season for Coach Prime and the Buffaloes? Is it time to hit the panic button? We got a lot of questions, but I want to hear from Will first. What are your thoughts on Coach Prime and the Buffaloes so far?
Yeah, as the resident Stanford fan and maybe the only one east of the Rockies, I would just like to say that this isn't about Colorado being bad. It's about Stanford being incredible. I'm ready to be ranked, but I never want to see Justin Lamson ever again. Okay. No, jokes aside, that was bad. You can't be doing that at home. There's so many problems with that defense. It's like you can't even start. Even USC held Stanford to 10 points, and we've seen over the last couple of weeks what the USC defense is really made of, which is pretty much paper and prayers. So that is a really embarrassing showing. Obviously, Iowa Manor had just like a Randy Moss type of day, and there's not always a lot you can do about that. But the offense stalling out late is a little scary. Like if you're up 29, even if your defense implodes, you should be able to, score your way to a win. Against the 130th best defense in the country by EPA. So that is pretty terrifying for Colorado. They have a big bye coming up. This is a big bye. Get Travis Hunter a bit closer to 100%. Prep for their next few games. 5 more games left to win twice to get bowl eligible. And I don't know. Arizona could be a win, but UCLA, Oregon State, Wazoo, and Utah, it's a toughie. I don't want to predict them to go 0-4, but I don't know which one I'm going to say they're going to win.
Patrick, what are your thoughts on this? Obviously, that's a pretty brutal schedule. Can they get to 6 wins? Can they get bowl eligible?
I have them winning 1 win the rest of the season. I mean, all those ranked teams, they haven't looked great, right, against the good teams, and I don't see it getting any better. The problem I had with this loss is Deion Sanders after the game, calling out his players immediately after a loss like that, saying, they're not in love with the game, they're in like with the game. When you blow a 29-0 lead, that's not all on the players. Like, where's the accountability from Deion Sanders? And at this point, Shadur being all cocky, flashing his watch, bringing out all the celebrity guests in Boulder, like it feels like a joke. It feels like a sideshow. And I think, we're all a little tired of it now, and we're kind of seeing it come to fruition where, all the glitz and glam is great, but if you don't put the results on the field, it doesn't really matter.
I have a hard time saying that it's like a failure of a season or anything like that because, it's a long game thing for Colorado and Boulder. This is a team that won 1 game last year. It's going to take some time for them to turn things around. And as much as we want to criticize the circus and all the theatrics and everything, it's going to help them long term. This is a program that's going to get big recruits because of all the celebrities showing up, all the NIL opportunities. That being said, your son playing quarterback and selling merch at halftime, that's a tough look. That is a brutal look on things. So I don't think they're going to become bowl eligible. Any upset wins here would be a huge victory for the program. I'm just not seeing that bowl game. But that being said, I think going from 1 win to 4 in your first season, I know there's a lot of transfers in and out. I just think the future is bright in Colorado, especially if Deion really is committed to that program, which I do think he is. Should be a fun couple of years. And
they're also moving to the Big 12.
Moving on.
They're going over to the Big 12, which should be a little bit less challenging. Yeah. They already got a Big 12 conference win over TCU. So, I mean, this season's probably a wash in terms of the bowl, but I wouldn't call it a failure. They beat their preseason wins total, so love that.
Yeah, and obviously, they're going to keep stealing. I think regardless of whether they win or lose the rest of the season, that's a team that's going to keep getting headlines. Obviously, we're talking about it right now to kick off the show after a collapsed loss. But let's go ahead and move down south to the SEC because the number 1 team in the country has some huge news going on with tight end Brock Bowers undergoing surgery after an ankle injury. Seemed fine enough at the time. Kirby Smart kind of downplayed it during the game. But here we are Bowers is getting tightrope surgery on his ankle. I think the estimate is 4 to 6 weeks he's out. This is a guy we had Will writing about. Could he be a historical tight end to win a Heisman? And now, that's obviously out the window with the injury. how much trouble is Georgia in? Do you think their season's in jeopardy? Let's start with Patrick. I know he's the Florida Gators fan. He's going to be a Georgia hater.
Yeah, you mentioned the tightrope. I think they're going to be walking the tightrope the rest of the season. Easy, right? First of all, their schedule is tough. And I think that starts with Florida. I think people are going to underestimate Florida in that game. Florida has a top 20 defense. That game is always won in the trenches. It's always about, who's running the ball well. It's going to come down to defense. And also Graham Mertz is coming off the best game of probably his career against South Carolina. So I always do this. I always do this with this game. I get way too optimistic because, Florida comes off a good game. I think Georgia's in trouble. I think because that offense kind of revolves around Brock Bowers, the dogs are going to the pound. And honestly, it feels sort of like a USC situation where, you keep, especially at the quarterback position for Georgia, he can only play to where, the defense, basically until the defense, can only hold him up so much, and he's not a Caleb Williams. So, yeah, I think they're in trouble. I think they're going to probably lose a game here or there, but I think the Florida game's the big one, and you know what I'm hoping for.
Well, I think we got to come up with a bet next week for it. Since I'm the Georgia fan, you're the Florida fan. We're going to have to figure that out. Maybe Will can be maybe Will can be the mediator there. But, Will, what are your thoughts on this? Are you panicking about Georgia's chances, whether that is an SEC championship or a playoff spot?
I'm tempering my expectations a little bit. I'm not as concerned for them about world's largest outdoor cocktail party as Patrick is, for the sole reason this is a good Florida defense, and Mertz is a lot more efficient than he was at Wisconsin in this new system. But I think that coming off of the bye week is pretty big for Georgia at this point. It's going to give them a chance to adjust to the Bowers news. I still think they're going to run the table through the SEC East and get to the conference championship 12-0. Question is, do they beat Alabama? And they are lucky that Alabama's also having kind of a down year. It's a good Alabama team.
Yeah.
This is not your Nick Saban blow the doors off every team in the country Alabama team, not by a long shot. So Georgia could still go 13-0. I don't think it's going to be pretty, and not that it's been pretty. They had that nice Kentucky win, but they give the first touchdown to Vandy, had only a 10-point lead at one point in the fourth quarter. I think it's worth noting that Georgia hasn't been my natty pick at any point in the season, but no, I really don't think so. I think Brock would have been one of the few game breakers who can really, one of the few in the country who can really make plays against Michigan. And maybe he's back by then. Maybe if he is, he's 100%, but I don't know if that's all going to happen. So until we get some positive news on Brock, I think Georgia, they're fine in the SEC, but in terms of this historic three-peat, they're on the ropes.
You guys are way too down on my Dogs fan. I still have faith. I know Bowers is a huge loss, especially because it feels like the offense was kind of unlocked when it was why don't we just give the ball to Bowers as much as possible? That being said, I think the return of Ladd McConkey, he's still getting ramped up, still not playing 100% of the snaps, but I went back and watched the film of that guy when he's healthy, and he is just a legitimate wide receiver. You have Rob Thomas, this transfer wide receiver, emerged, had a great game against Kentucky. Carson Beck is making strides. And then I think defensively, I think the vibes are off on them because I think they're just so used to such a dominant front seven. But what I really think is keeping Georgia in these games is this really experienced secondary. You got Kamari Lassiter, Tyke Smith, Javon Bullard. These are some experienced secondary and defensive backs that are kind of holding this defense together. And I think when they're playing these heavy passing games, potentially in the playoff, in the SEC championship, I think that can be an edge that we're really not talking enough about. So I'm sorry, Patrick. I think they got that win in Florida in a couple weeks, but again, we'll have to have a bet on that. But the other SEC team everyone's talking about because it's been such a weird year for them, Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Jalen Milroe is one of the most chaotic quarterbacks in college football right now. Some weeks they're dominating, some weeks they're shaky against weaker teams. Obviously, that loss to Texas. They're going up against a Tennessee team that, seems like it's kind of a CFP dark horse contender at the beginning of the year. Joe Milton's getting a lot of hype. I don't know if they've fully unlocked it. It's a really weird matchup against two teams I don't think are really meeting the expectations they had in the preseason. So, Will, do you think they have enough to take on Tennessee? Do you think there's some bigger questions at stake? What do you think is going on with Alabama?
I'd go with a little bit of both. I think they're going to be fine in this game. I mean, they're going to be fired up after losing to Tennessee last year for the first time in, I think, 12 years or something like that. It had been a while. Tennessee's not that much of a powerhouse. Every week I look at the rankings and I don't understand how high they are. Joe Milton is dreadful. I mean, he has some high arm talent, but absolutely no accuracy. Doesn't get through his progressions that well. I mean, if he had worked out better, he might still be in Ann Arbor, and it's not going that well. He's one of the better quarterbacks in a very weak quarterback SEC after Jaden Daniels, but coming into Tuscaloosa, I don't think so. It's going to be a pretty one-dimensional Tennessee offense with Milton struggling on the road, and that run game is pretty solid, but in Tuscaloosa against a top 40 run D, I don't know if they can do the heavy lifting. So in the big picture, Alabama, same old story. I think they're going to make it to the SEC championship, play Georgia, and they've got a shot there. I mean, we just talked about Georgia being a little vulnerable, but ultimately it's probably not going to happen. This is, This is I don't want to say the beginning of the end for Bama, but this is going to be the least they've ever threatened a college football playoff spot under Nick Saban.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, Patrick, I think you know something about SEC quarterbacks with great arm talent and are athletic but questionable accuracy. So
I don't know all the game managers that Georgia has had. Look, okay, they say one man's trash is another man's treasure. Well, Michigan's trash is now Tennessee's trash. I literally just have written down that Joe Milton sucks because I was watching that game, and it would be, like Will said, it'd be a simple like slant, and the throw is way off. I mean, the accuracy concerns have been there all season. I think Alabama's defense is too good for that. That just doesn't play. I don't think this one will actually be close, despite, Alabama's kind of shakiness all season. So especially after last season with, the whole goalpost in the river and all that crap, I think Alabama comes to play. I think they take it a little personally. I don't see it being close. And I think Alabama will be fine the rest of the season.
I'm so fascinated by this matchup because of Kool-Aid McKinstry. I mean, that kid's going to be a potential top 10 pick in the NFL draft. And I really want to know how Alabama's defense responds to what got them exposed last year. These super wide out wide receivers stacked on top of each other, because Tennessee doesn't have Jalen Hyatt anymore. They don't have that explosive deep threat that's going to get, what did he have? 5 touchdowns last year against Alabama. I don't see that happening again. I think Nick Saban's one of the best defensive minds in all of football, professional or college. I think he has a plan for how to handle this offensive scheme. And I think with the talent in their secondary, they're going to shut it down. So I just don't see it happening. And I do think after that Texas loss, that Alabama's kind of woken up a bit. It's not pretty, but they are winning football games. And I think that alone is kind of calming down their rabid fan base. But let's go ahead and move back out west. We got to talk about USC. Kind of an embarrassing showing against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And Caleb Williams with multiple interceptions definitely threw himself out of the playoff race, the Heisman Trophy race. Do you think their playoff hopes are over? How is this going to impact Caleb's draft stock? I'm happy to talk about that in a little bit. Patrick, you kind of had the take and kind of told me to calm down at the beginning of the year when I said Drake May was a better quarterback. What are your thoughts right now about Caleb?
Now I think he's a little bit overrated. I mean, just watch the 3 picks in the first half against Notre Dame. We talked about it last show. I mean, this Notre Dame defense is good, and we saw it. We saw Caleb Williams sort of panicky. He finally faces a good defense, and that's what happens. We were all waiting on this loss, right? We were all waiting for Caleb Williams not to be the Caleb Williams we're used to, putting up 40, 50 points a game. And the defense obviously didn't do anything, which we were all sort of expecting as well. As far as it hurting his draft stock, I don't think it hurts his draft stock. I think the dude is still, one of those generational talents. I know that phrase gets thrown out around a lot. I think he just had a bad game against a good defense. But I don't think there's anything to panic about with Caleb. As far as USC, I don't think this is a playoff team anymore. I don't know that it ever was with that defense.
Yeah, Will, I'm curious. Let's keep on the playoff talk, because this Pac-12 conference, and you're our East Coast Pac-12 expert, I mean, it's a buzzsaw. And they still have some crazy competition coming up. And then after Michael Penix and Washington's huge win over Oregon, kind of feels like they're really the playoff contender out of that conference.
Yeah, I would say that the challenge level of the Pac-12 is both the reason that USC can and won't make the playoff. If this were the ACC, like if North Carolina drops their Clemson game, I don't know where their resume is coming from if they go 13-1.
Yeah.
USC, they still have to host Utah, who beat them in the Pac-12 championship last year. They're hosting Washington. They're going to Oregon, and they're hosting UCLA. Those are incredible teams. We're talking 2 top 10 defenses, 2 top 5 offenses they have to face. If they tightrope that and then beat one of those teams again in the conference championship, they are going. And I would almost put them over an undefeated team as maybe a 2 seed, because that is an incredibly impressive resume. So the chance, their path is there, but there is no way they're going to do it. I think they're fine this week against Utah because, I mean, Utah is one of the few teams that can't exploit their horrendous defense. It could be an ugly one. USC winning a gritty defensive battle is not something I had on my bingo card for this season, but I think it might happen. But that finishing stretch of Washington, Oregon, UCLA, it ain't happening. I think they're done playoff wise. Caleb is definitely done Heisman wise, because I think going in as trying to be a repeat winner, Patrick, you know this based on Tim Tebow's absolute robbery situation. You have to do more than be the best player in the country to get your second. You have to not just one up everyone else. You have to one up yourself from your previous Heisman campaign.
Yeah.
You see it in pro sports where players get more shots in 4 years. So it happens. He needed to be far and away the best. That performance, while Michael Penix picked up his signature win, Drake May is surging with 715 yards, 7 touchdowns, and no picks in his last 2 games. Caleb's done, Heisman-wise. Nothing can hurt his draft stock.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing short of catastrophic injury.
No.
Teams are rightfully obsessed with him. He's incredible. But Heisman-wise, playoff-wise, I think it's about it, unless he does boycott the draft. And speaking of the draft and that Notre Dame defense, Benjamin Morrison, man, I mean, you can get a beautiful apartment overlooking a crystal blue lake. We've got great food. A lot of fun stuff to do here in Chicago, so can't wait to have you, man. Dude's incredible.
I do want to touch on Caleb Williams, the draft prospect, really quick, because I do think by the time the season's said and done, we're going to have a fascinating debate. I do think Caleb Williams should be the number 1 pick. However, there's just such a stylistic difference between him and Drake May, who, unless the Bears get the first 2 picks, which is a real possibility, Drake May could go number 2. And I think it just becomes this conversation of, do you want the improvisational gunslinger, can make throws everywhere, is getting Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes comps, and Caleb Williams? Or do you want that prototypical 6'4" pocket passer, has some athletic ability, and just has excellent mental processing in Drake May? And it's such a fascinating just comparison of the two, because if Caleb Williams was not in this draft, it would not be close. Drake May would be the number 1 pick. I think both of them are better than any quarterback prospects we've had in the last few seasons. And I'm really excited to see where both land. I think it's going to be an awesome draft beyond just the quarterbacks. You also have Michael Penix. Who knows where he's going to land as a 24, 25-year-old with injury history. You got tons of tackles, edge rushers, wide receivers. I mean, I feel old. Marvin Harrison's kid is about to be in the NFL. And as someone that grew up in Indianapolis, I don't know how to cope with that. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a very fun draft season. I'll be sure to have plenty of content over at FanBuzz on that front. But we want to introduce a couple new segments to you guys. We're going to be bringing these over going forward. I'm really excited about them. We're going to start with I'm So Over It. And that may sound like, I'm just done with college football. It's not. What games are we taking the over in this week? I'm going to go ahead and start with this one. I'm looking at here and I'm seeing the lines, and, there's a lot of games that are going to have a lot of points. I'm going to take Texas and Houston. Houston's offense took a little bit to, get going, a couple bad games, but the last few weeks, they're really pouring it on. I love Texas's offense as well. And all that's going on in my head right now is Jonathan Gannon with the Arizona Cardinals. Pew, pew, shots, explosives, pew, pew. I think they're going to break that 60.5 over. I think it's going to be an absolute shootout. Can't wait to watch that one. Will, who are you taking on the over?
Well, I'd like to start with a mini cautionary tale about diving too deep into analytics. All the anti-analytics narratives are a bit much in sports sometimes, but there is a human aspect to the game. You can't just look at it as ones and zeros. I almost took Air Force versus Navy for this segment, and it's a low number at 37.5. Air Force is 5th in the country in offensive EPA per play, but I just took a step back, said, Will, just chill for a second. We are not doing a Service Academy over. I'm not saying you bet the under, because this is a good offense, but don't touch that one. I feel bad for even thinking it. Anyways, our actual play is going to be Boston College and Georgia Tech. Number is set at 58.5. Get the lowest one you can, of course, though. Make sure to shop around. BC's offense is pretty electric. Thomas Castellanos looks incredible. He announced himself in that game against Florida State that they would have won if they didn't have 18 penalties, and I'm not going to rant about that game again, but he can throw, he can run. He just ran for 4 touchdowns, 142 against Army. Yeah, I mean, they decided to play Army and be Army on offense. They barely threw the ball, but he can do it too. Georgia Tech's defense is streaky. They look good against Miami. They gave up 38 to Bowling Green. And we have some gorgeous football weather in Atlanta. This is the time of year where the weather advantage switches to the south. We're done with the 98-degree scorchers on football Saturdays. It's just going to be comfortable offense weather down in Atlanta for this one. So I think, getting into the 30s for both of these teams is a distinct possibility, because while that BC offense is on fire at times, the defense has not had a single good outing yet this season.
Okay, here's the thing. You mentioned the human element. How about the animal element? If you guys don't know what I'm talking about the Floyd of Rosedale. I don't know if you guys know what this is, but just hear me out.
What?
The Floyd of Rosedale is a bronze pig that weighs 98 pounds that Iowa and Minnesota play for. Literally, go look it up. The Floyd of Rosedale. It's like 100-year-old thing. It used to be a real pig. It is a huge bronze pig that Iowa and Minnesota, which the over that I found is 32.5. I'm taking that 100% because they're playing for a pig. This is not. I don't really care that Iowa threw for 37 yards last game. I don't care that they're like the worst offense in the country. I'm taking it for the simple fact that they're playing over a pig. And I don't even know enough about Minnesota to be putting my own money on it, but you guys should.
This is worse than a Service Academy over. This is worse than a Service Academy over. It's a Big Ten over.
He took an
Iowa
Iowa
and Minnesota. Ethan Calamacanis is holding your money this weekend.
I just found the lowest mark I could and just tried to create a reason why. That's pretty much all I did.
It's the lowest mark you'll ever find, pretty much.
Please do yourself a favor and look at that trophy. I just Googled it, and I'm a Midwest guy, and I did not know about the pig trophy.
We've got some wild Midwest college football trophies. Like, I mean, there's a brown jug, there's a Paul Bunyan, but that one is pretty nuts. It's huge.
Oh my gosh, I did not expect that right now. Okay, I think we need to move on. Let's go ahead and move into our other segment. Did you see this? Just talking about what is your favorite moment from the past weekend? Let's have a little bit of fun with it. I got to start because I wasn't expecting it on Monday after the collapse loss, but Saturday Night Live and Kenan Thompson did a little sketch about Deion Sanders. And, I'm not always the biggest Saturday Night Live guy, but this one just did make me chuckle quite a bit. Kenan kind of nailed the Coach Prime bravado and the confidence and all this. Favorite quote from it, though, was just, we got it all right now here at Colorado. Offense, genius. Head coach, genius. Offense, explosive. Defense, trying. Just everything about that was phenomenal. Really enjoyed it. He's like, we have 4 wins. We have a couple of losses, but who's undefeated in college? He's like, well, you got Georgia, you got Florida State, and he just keeps going on and on. He's like, yep, that's true. All right. I just really enjoyed the sketch. Kenan Thompson, I can't believe he's still there, but kind of hit that one out of the park.
Well, first of all, Patrick, they need to make that a recurring segment like every week because Coach Prime is always in the news. Let's just keep that going, right? Like that's just the gift that keeps on giving and the gift that you can keep making fun of. My favorite thing I saw, I mean, who doesn't love a good Hail Mary? You guys probably saw Colorado State's Hail Mary against Boise State. First of all, the fact that they scored 21 points in like 4 minutes was insane. But then it's the way the Hail Mary worked out. Like the dude who ended up catching it, he wasn't even going up for the ball. He was kind of expecting the bat down. I was like, this dude's a genius. I don't know if they practice that when they actually do the Hail Mary. Like, is this guy like just diving at nothing in practice because he's expecting that bat down? I don't know. That's the Hail Mary sometimes to me is just, it's undefeated in terms of plays.
That is a legitimate coaching technique on the Hail Mary. I can tell you that. And it is pretty genius. Yeah, because defenses are taught, don't try and get the interception. Don't go for the glory. Just hit to the ground. So having the guy play like, I don't know what that is, like clean up rebounds, something like that. It's a pretty sound strategy. I definitely made a note of it when I saw it.
I don't know why it's taken so long for coaches to catch on to the Hail Mary bat after the immaculate reception in the 70s, but nothing new. But my moment of the week, I mean, I'd love to go with the Io Manor catch, but let's go a little less mainstream and one that not every single person in the world of college football has seen. We're going to get into another corner of my crazy eclectic college football fandom. For anyone who doesn't know, I am North Jersey, not born, but most definitely raised. And like everyone else from the region, I have a family member who went to Rutgers. Hi, Mom. So we're going to take a look at the Rutgers game. Man, as a weird combined Rutgers-Michigan fan, yes, from before they were both in the same conference, this was an awesome one for me. I mean, Michigan State having trouble with the snap snaps the football on the punt into their end zone. Rutgers recovers, pulls off the 24-6 comeback. Rutgers had an unbelievable pooch kick. Check it out if you haven't seen it. I'm still not sure if that was intentional or not, but it was almost like an over-the-shoulder catch for the gunner. I mean, absolutely beautiful. Love to see Michigan State go down in any capacity. Love to see Rutgers having so much success this season. I think if they're going into Bloomington. Tyler, we'll talk about that one next. Oh, will you?
I'll be there.
You get to see
I'll be there. Homecoming.
The Kyle Monangai show, fellow Essex County high school player. But if they pull that one off, they might be ranked. So I'm loving what I'm seeing from Rutgers, and that was a real exclamation point win.
Yeah, it's speaking of IU football, it's very weird as an IU basketball fan watching Trace Jackson Davis's brother play quarterback. That is just a very strange thing going on for me. But that's going to do it for this week. I had a lot of fun with this week. It was nice having Patrick and Will both in at the same time. I appreciate both of their takes about the college football week. So we'll be here next week. Thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, make sure you're subscribing and also make sure to sign up for our newsletter. A lot of good content over at fanbuzz.com. We have a lot of fun with the stuff that we're doing over there. So check the episode description below. Make sure that you are subscribing to that newsletter. You'll really enjoy it. You will not be disappointed. But that's going to do it for Patrick, Will, and myself. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week.
I will get Ryan Day's face framed and put on my wall if they lose. I'm here for that. It's got to go somewhere on my wall here.